Despite the 2023 NFL Draft literally ending just over a week ago, it's never too early to take a look at next year's draft. Comparing what actually happened in this year's draft to the mock drafts last year, there were a lot of changes, and there was a lot of players who either fell or came out of nowhere. It'll be the same case for the 2024 NFL Draft, but why not enjoy the hype and talk about the top 10 prospects right now? I'm going to be using a CBS mock draft, and I'm going to go through who these 10 prospects are, why everyone is so high on them, and just my general thoughts. But before we get started, if you're a fan of college football, be sure to subscribe, leave a like if you want to support today's video, turn on post notifications so you never miss when I upload, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I could cover next. Now, let's get started with a way too early 2024 mock draft. So the first guy we're going to talk about is Joe Alt. His dad played offensive line for Iowa back in the day, and his brother Mark played hockey at Minnesota and is currently in the NHL with the Los Angeles Kings. Growing up, it seemed that Joe was going to have every opportunity and resource to become a big-time football player, and that is exactly what would end up happening. While at Totino Grace High School, he played both tight end and defensive end, and actually had 17 catches for 143 yards. As a senior, he was a Mr. Football finalist, and ended up being ranked as a 4-star recruit according to 24/7 Sports. He ended up signing with Notre Dame, and has since completely blown up. As a freshman, he played both tight end and offensive line, starting the final 8 games. In 2022, Alt had an insane season, as he would start all 13 matchups at left tackle, and helped them rack up 2,500 yards rushing. Because of that, he was named a first and second team All-American by what looks like about 20 different sites, and Alt has the size and potential to be the next great Notre Dame offensive lineman and could be protecting your quarterback in just a couple of years. The next guy we're going to talk about is Dallas Turner. Coming out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, Turner ended up going to the prestigious St. Thomas Aquinas School, and as a senior had 13 sacks and 25 TFLs. He eventually decided to pick Alabama over Georgia, Michigan, and Ohio State, and was listed as a 5-star recruit. When he arrived at Bama in 2021, he got an opportunity to play right away, and looked like one of the best pass rushers in all of college football. He ended up starting 3 games, finishing with 10 TFLs and 8.5 sacks. This was also alongside Will Anderson, and some people thought going into 2022 that Turner was the second best edge rusher in the country. He ended up taking a little bit of a step back in 2022 as he started 10 games, had 8 TFLs and 4 sacks, but he is still one of the most athletic and best pass rushing prospects we've seen in years, and with just one more decent season, will most certainly be a top 10 pick and could terrorize opposing quarterbacks for years. Up next, we need to talk about Ohio State edge rusher JT Tuamaloa. Personally, he's my favorite edge rusher for next year's draft, and I think he has the potential to take over college football in 2023. Coming out of the state of Washington, he ended up going to Eastside High School and finished his senior year with 64 tackles and 11 sacks. He's also a basketball star. His insane height, athleticism, and potential, he was at one point rated the #1 overall football prospect in the country. He decided to commit to Ohio State, becoming their highest rated defensive prospect in the modern recruiting era, and would also eventually reclassify. As a freshman, he played in all 13 games and finished with 17 tackles and 4.5 tackles for loss. In 2022, he'd start to break out a little bit more, as he was the Big Ten and National Defensive Player of the Week after the Penn State game. And while he didn't play a whole lot, he had 2 sacks, 2 interceptions, and 1 forced fumble in that one game against Penn State. It was absolutely insane, and if he could put it all together next year, he could easily be a top 5 pick and a long-term NFL player. Up next, we have another offensive tackle we need to talk about, and that is J.C. Latham. Like pretty much every big-time recruit down south, J.C. Latham eventually went to IMG Academy, and with his insane physical measurements and potential, he was listed as the #1 offensive lineman in the country. I clearly remember everyone talking about him, and he eventually picked Alabama over LSU, Notre Dame, Ohio State, and Wisconsin. He was a unanimous 5-star recruit, and someone that was projected to play right away. In 2021, he saw action in 14 games and played 104 snaps during his first year there. He got his foot in the door for the Tide, and in 2022, he claimed the starting job at the right tackle position. He ended up starting all 13 games in 2022, having 29 knockdown blocks and not allowing many edge rushers or linebackers to get past him. He did a tremendous job blocking for Bryce Young, and while the offensive line for Bama wasn't great, at 6'6", Latham was by far the best player on the line. I expect him to go around the same range that Paris Johnson went this year, and I think he'll be a great lineman for years to come. The only thing that could hurt him now, I think, is an injury. It seems like just yesterday, everyone was talking about the next generational quarterback in Quinn OSullivan. Time is really flying by, as he'll be eligible for next year's draft. Ewers ended up becoming a 5-star recruit coming out of the state of Texas, and after committing to Texas, would eventually flip to Ohio State. He decided to enroll early, where he got some good coaching and experience playing behind CJ Stroud, and then decided to transfer back to Texas. He beat out Hudson Card for the starting job, and last year started out strong. He ended up playing in 10 games, throwing for 2,177 yards, 15 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. He got hurt in that second game against Alabama, and for the most part, Ewers was pretty good last year, but everyone's banking on his potential. If he can live up to the hype and have a big 2022 season, he'll be a top 10 pick and a future franchise quarterback. The next guy we're to talk about is another big-time offensive lineman prospect, and that is Olu Fashanu. Fashanu was a big deal in high school, as he was considered one of the top lineman prospects and committed to Penn State over Michigan and Ohio State. He ended up blocking for Caleb Williams while he was in high school, and Fashanu didn't play much early on, but would eventually take over and has now become one of the best offensive linemen in the country. As a freshman in 2021, he appeared in 9 games, making 1 start, which came in their bowl game. In 2022, Fashanu would absolutely blow up as he started 8 games at left tackle and allowed 0 sacks in 281 attempts. He became a second and third team All-American according to pretty much every site and would have been a first-round pick in this year's draft, but decided to come back. He's banking on going even higher next year and playing with a Penn State team that could compete for a national championship. Up next is our 4th best prospect in the 2024 NFL Draft. We're going to talk about Jaquincy McCoy. Better known as Kool-Aid, he was one of the first benefactors of NIL. As coming out of high school, he chose Alabama over Auburn and LSU and was listed as a 5-star recruit. He was the number 1 corner in the country and would make an immediate impact for Bama. He ended up becoming a freshman All-SEC player as he finished with 25 tackles, 1 sack, and 1 interception. In 2022, he became a starting corner and also returned punts. According to PFF, he was a first-team All-American at corner, becoming one of the top players in all of college football. He ended up finishing with 35 tackles, 2 TFLs, and 1 sack, and had 15 pass deflections and 2 fumble recoveries. If he can play anything like that next year, he'll be the top corner prospect in next year's draft and someone every scout will want. At number 3, we currently have Drake Maye. Coming out of the Charlotte area in North Carolina, Maye was the brother of Luke Maye, who was the former UNC basketball player, and after becoming a 4-star recruit, decided to go to Alabama. Eventually, the call to stay home ended up being too much, as he flipped from the Tide to the Tar Heels and would become a backup in 2021. He ended up beating out Jacoby Criswell for the job in 2022 and had an insane season. He threw for 4,321 yards with 38 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. He was putting up video game numbers for most of the year, and while he did eventually cool off towards the end of it and lost a couple of games they shouldn't have lost, Maye right now is probably the 2nd best quarterback in college football for next year and is considered a franchise quarterback. Will he be a one-year wonder or a long-term prospect? That right now is the big question. Number 2, we have to talk about Marvin Harrison Jr. Ohio State has become a wide receiver factory as of late, with Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, and Jackson Smith-Njigba, but Harrison could be the best out of the 3 of them. Coming into St. Joseph's Prep, the son of former legendary receiver Marvin Harrison ended up playing alongside future 5-star quarterback Kyle McCord. Both him and McCord would end up going to Ohio State, and Harrison would be a backup in 2021. He would erupt in the Rose Bowl game against Utah, though, with 3 touchdowns, and with JSN being hurt, he took over in 2022. He became one of the most dominant receivers in the country, finishing with 77 catches for 1,263 yards and 14 touchdowns. He is the best wide receiver prospect since Jamar Chase, in my opinion, and some would argue could end up being better than his dad if he continues on this path. One of the craziest parts about today's list is that 2 top 5 picks played on the same high school team. Coming out of high school, Caleb Williams listed as the number 1 quarterback in the 2021 class and decided to commit to Lincoln Riley at Oklahoma after Brock Vandagriff flipped to Georgia. Williams would be the backup to Spencer Rattler, but would take over against Texas and led them to that miracle comeback. He ended up having an insane season, finishing with nearly 2,000 yards and 21 touchdowns. As Lincoln Riley decided to go to USC, Williams followed him and took over right away. Last year, Williams would win the Heisman Trophy, finishing with 4,537 yards and 42 touchdowns. He only had 5 picks and had 10 more scores on the ground. As I said, he won the Heisman and is by far the best returning quarterback in college football and a surefire number 1 overall pick for next year. I think Williams has insane potential in the NFL, and he's one of my favorite quarterback prospects of all time. Just how good will he be right now is the only question about him. So yeah, today we talked about the top 10 prospects for the 2023 NFL Draft, went through who they were, what my thoughts are on them, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to let me know down below what you think. Who is your favorite prospect for 2023, and what topic should I cover next? Be sure to let me know down below. Leave a like if you want to support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out all my other videos on the end screen. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.